Welcome to Convention Reviews. Today we'll be talking about Sakuracon 2026. This is an annual anime convention that occurs over the Easter holiday in Seattle, Washington. One thing that makes this event interesting is that the event is actually split between two different buildings. One is at Summit, the other is at Arch, which are about a block away from each other, which is a little unusual from a lot of other larger events I've attended. There is certainly plenty of attendees as well as activities that occur between both buildings to definitely justify both buildings being occupied. One thing I will say is that the registration this year was much better than I've seen in previous years. One of the things I think that may be attributed to this is that they moved away from the printable badges that they've had in previous years, which has caused a lot of issues, to a hard one-size-fits-all badge that a lot of other bigger conventions have moved to. I will say that I do wish this convention actually did mail badges like you see at Otakon, but at least it's a major step up, at least size-wise, because I did not see people waiting in line for hours and hours to get their badge like I've seen in previous years. One thing I really enjoy about Sakuracon is that there are a lot of areas that are really great for cosplay photography throughout the entire event. One thing I really enjoyed was that they had these really nice sakura blossom trees throughout the venues in different buildings, which really allowed for some great cosplay pictures to be taken over the event, as well as the stairwell in Summit, as well as the bridge in Arch also are really popular areas for gathering for photos, which, was a really fun area if you were looking for that kind of really good photography. Another aspect I really like is that they also had a really nice little arcade as well, which really had a good collection of older Japanese games, as well as more modern, as well as some coin collector games, which were also really fun. The dealer's hall in Summit's basement also was absolutely massive. If you were looking for anything for official merchandise from almost every vendor you could imagine was down there, as well as many of the voice actors also had a booth as well. I also want to mention that the Artist Alley, which is in Arch, also was just equally as big as the Dealer's Hall in Summit as well. There was a lot of really great cosplay throughout the Artist Alley and, really had a really great selection of options. One thing I will note is that I am also starting to notice a lot of the vendors are now very clearly and prominently starting to show the no AI badges put into their tables as well, because it's starting to become kind of a big deal in a lot of Artist Alleys with a lot of slop and, stuff starting to kind of make its way in. When it comes to cosplay, I also do really want to admit that I do really enjoy coming across cosplayers that, are really rare or you don't see that often. I will say for this particular event, I ran across somebody from Angel's Egg as well as Dispatch and even more recent anime such as Sentenced to be a Hero. But, it really goes to show you that there is some really interesting creativity when it comes to some more not as common cosplay. Although I will say that there was quite a lot of the Witch Hat Alteria cosplay at this particular event because it was probably the largest premiere at Sakuracon as well. Another interesting aspect of Sakuracon is the panel content. When it comes to the more general content for anime-related panels, I will say it was a bit of a mixed bag in the sense that some were absolutely amazing, unique concepts. Others I've seen at, much more smaller, medium-sized events, which, was decent if you don't go to a lot of these events, but definitely a little bit surprising for me, for somebody who goes to a lot of these larger events like Otakon. But this may just be a West Coast thing. One other thing I really enjoyed about this event was that there were quite a few Itasha cars in one of the more public open parking lots between the buildings. And, it was a nice little taste since there was a panelist who did some Itasha car panel content. So it was kind of cool to see some of these in the wild since it's not really as big in this part of the country compared to California, Texas, or some areas of the Northeast. One of the highlights of Sakuracon is the AMV workshops and panels related to AMVs and AMV related content. They had a really wide variety throughout the rest of this con, and you can really tell they spent a lot of time and energy investing into this particular aspect. There were some really interesting concepts talking about the evolution of AMVs from the early 2000s onward, and it was really cool because they were showing just how far the technology has evolved to allow bigger and better AMVs to be created. But there also were a lot of very interesting specialty AMV theater content related to creating stuff that was manga oriented, to sort of local creators who happened to be at the convention, as well as some really fun panels involving comedy, among many others, that I really will say was a interesting concept. So it definitely was a really interesting grab bag of, things that, definitely was very well curated among many of the AMV panelists and people that were organizing these events. So, regardless of whatever kind of piqued your interest, there definitely was something there for everyone. I will say I definitely enjoyed some of the ones that were kind of like blasts from the past from, 20 years ago, or, talking about Toonami among many others. But there also were some that were also involving like, improving your skill sets as an AMV creator, whether it's just getting into it or, upping your game, or even providing some feedback, which, definitely was a really interesting thing for, people who don't really see the other side of the judging and reviewing of AMVs for these competitions. One of the more unique AMV panels was related to the Cheesecake Factory that unfortunately caught fire last year and became a bit of a local meme for the Sakuracon community. It did affect the convention because the Artist Alley was shut down for a couple of hours, and people really had a lot of fun kind of ripping on this particular event. Besides that, the main AMV contest is absolutely amazing. It is, as far as I'm aware, one of the largest in North America, if not the world, and really pulls in some of the best AMV creators for this particular event. I will say that it was a very tough judge for this particular competition and really had some great AMVs regardless of category, so definitely worth checking out. The main musical guests for Sakuracon this year were the bands Scandal and Blue and Count. Scandal is most famously known for Full Metal Alchemist cover, as well as Blue and Count doing My Hero Academia. Both shows were absolutely amazing, very high energy events, and I would even go as far as saying probably one of the best performances I've seen at one of these kinds of concerts. One of the things I found really cool though was that the lead singers from both bands actually came to the other person's performance and actually did like a dual performance with them, which was really cool. I will say Blue and Count was definitely extremely high energy. They really were getting into the crowd work, and it's something like that's really an experience that you don't really get to see at a lot of other events where they kind of just play and it's like, thank you for coming, and then leave. Overall, I had a really great time at Sakuracon. It was a really fun event that unfortunately I wasn't able to hit everything, but I feel like I was really satisfied with the content I saw there, and I'm really excited to come back again next year potentially and see some more stuff. And if you happen to attend this event, please let me know, and if not, I will see you on the next convention review.